Kia ora and welcome to episode 3 of Kiwis on Tour. Today we're on location at the stunning Tiaki Golf Estate in the Waikato with a man on a mission to be the longest hitter in the world. He was the first Kiwi to break 220-mile-an-hour ball speed, and by claiming the Australian Long Drive Tour Championship, he's about to take on the World Long Drive Championships in Colorado. His name is George Wardell, and we're about to hear his story. George, welcome and thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much.
We may as well take it right back to the start. How did you get into golf, and was it a question of when you started trying it, you were able to hit the long ball and that's why you got into long drive?
No, so for me, I played like a lot of sports growing up. I just was like every Kiwi kid, I guess, and I had a few shoulder injuries playing rugby, and my mother was like, "You're going to have the winter off rugby." I was quite small at high school, so she's like, "You just need to get bigger and stronger." And I was like, "What am I going to do in my winter?" So my uncle ended up taking me to go play golf, and I played a little 9-hole club in Geraldine called Grandview. It was my first experience, and my first 18-hole round, straight out of the car, straight into it, was 146. So hadn't played golf. First experience, 18 holes, thrown in the deep end, rack up some big numbers. And a week later, I was like, most sports I was kind of okay at, and I was a bit frustrated that I was so bad at golf. So 7 days later, I went back to Grandview again, played 18 holes again, and shot 86.
Wow.
And after that, a few people were like, "Oh, you could actually be okay." So that's kind of what got me hooked into golf. And then after that, I just kind of kept playing and started there.
So so that was a week later that you then took that amount of strokes off your score. Do you remember what it was that came together the second time around?
Well, the difference between the first time and the second time is I actually hit some golf balls in the paddock at home. So I was pretty annoyed with how I played. And I was like, surely I can do better than this. Like, it can't be that hard, which we all know that it is pretty hard. But as a 15-year-old, I was determined that it wasn't. So, like 50, 60 shots later, and I was like, okay, I actually got hooked and started playing like that.
And then the other sports, did there come a point where you sort of had to make a decision and I'm going to pursue golf a bit more seriously?
Yeah, so I carried on playing cricket in the summer and kind of golf on Sundays and during the week. And then when I turned 16, I started playing golf as my main sport and started playing some representative golf, went down to Dunedin to study my bachelor's degree down there and played with a bunch of the boys in Otago and just kept going and going from there.
Awesome. You mentioned your studies. You have a master's in sports science. Obviously, human performance, crucial part of hitting the long ball. Did you think, okay, well, I'm doing this golf thing, this makes sense in terms of what I can do in academics? Was that kind of your rationale there?
I think it was the blend of study and something I was passionate about. So I was into biomechanics, I enjoyed human movement, and I just wanted to help my friends and myself get better. So that's where the 3D biomech study came from. And I was interested in using super speed as a warm-up and what's that potential influence on clubhead speed and how does that alter our movement. So that's the route I went down. And during that, I found some cool things on how your body adapts to try and produce more speed, and that was cool. But I wouldn't say it was revolutionary in my own speed development. Through that whole process, I was swinging it around 114, 115 miles an hour. So not particularly fast, just a tick under, tour speed, average tour speed. Then when I moved into the high performance space here in the Waikato, that's when I got challenged to work on that element, work on rotational power and explore that realm a little bit more. And that's where long drive started for me.
I see. And you've used a few sort of like buzzwords, club head speed, ball speed, those sorts of things. Are you able to give me just a brief sort of comparison between, say, where you are at and, say, the echelon of the pro game of golf, like PGA Tour?
So the PGA Tour, if you're around high 170s, high 180 ball speed, that's pretty elite. We've got a couple exceptions to that. Minwoo, Rory, Bryson, they're in the early 190s. And you're kind of mid 120s, early 130s clubhead speed to generate that.
Yeah.
And compared to where I was when I was playing golf, that was significantly faster.
Yeah.
But where I am now, I swing at about 150 miles an hour.
Okay.
And 220 ball speed. So it's a very different game.
Yeah.
And, playing golf where you get one shot on the tee box compared to long drive where you get 6 attempts, it gives you freedom to kind of open up the shoulders a little bit and give it a good hit.
Yeah. Could any of those players that you mentioned, like a Bryson or a Minwoo, could they roll up to a long drive comp and hold their own, or is it not like that at all, even for these top guns?
Yeah, I think you see it in long drive that guys are pretty protective of their sport.
Yeah.
But it's so condition dependent that I honestly think that anyone can compete. And if the conditions are right, there's no reason why Minwoo's stinger wouldn't suit a headwind, and he could be unbelievably competitive.
Okay.
So long drive, because there's such an emphasis on speed and generally carry and the height that you hit it, if it's a strong headwind and it doesn't quite suit a certain player, that's when golfers have a much higher advantage and they can be competitive.
Yeah.
And the grid widths change quite a lot as well. In America, the grids are normally quite wide, kind of 50 yards.
Okay.
You go to Japan and sometimes they can be 35 yards, so really narrow.
So that's basically the area that it can land for it to count.
Correct.
It's not a lot of
No, it's not a lot of room. And so Japan, because all the events are held on golf courses, they basically go, well, the grid is the fairway.
Okay.
And coming from a golfing background, I really like it because visually it gives you something to aim for.
Yeah.
Where in America, like Worlds in Colorado as an example, was on a turf farm. And so it's just this ginormous grass area that they put flags on.
Okay.
And so seeing a shape or something is really difficult in such a big open space.
Yeah.
So it's quite cool that depending on where you compete in the world depends what suits what.
Yeah.
But reverting back to your original question, like we've seen in the past Bryson be competitive in long drive when he did his early speed development. So I think it's a really cool space where the more blend we have between the specialist long driver and the golf pro that's fast, I think the better for both sports.
For sure. I mean, it'd be cool to see something like on TGL if they did like a little long drive component of that, or add an extra sort of element to that sort of style of golf.
And if they want to even the playing field a little bit, rather than going the traditional 6 balls of long drive, you go, there's only 3. We're cutting it in half.
Yeah, there you go.
Put more pressure on the long driver who has a speed advantage, and the flight advantage that the pro has comes into play more.
Yeah. I think that would be really cool. I would love to watch that personally. And back to your training, and your warm-up routine and all these sort of things, I can imagine that is probably as crucial as it is to actually competition, right? Preparing your body and all that sort of thing. Can you briefly step me through what sort of areas leading up to competition you're focusing on in terms of your training?
So I guess the underlying principle I have is that the golf club's never getting any heavier. You just have to learn to move it faster.
Okay, I like that.
And so with that philosophy, it doesn't necessarily mean that I squat, 200, and if I squat 300, then I'll be so much better. So it doesn't really work like that, because a better comparison is if you have a 70 centimeter vertical jump and you vertical jump shifts to 75, that's a more high speed component and more, a higher speed movement, and that's got a better chance of carrying over into your actual swing. Right. So that doesn't mean that squatting won't make you jump better, which will make your clubhead speed better. But I think that bridge between what weights you move and golf is really important. And I think moving your body in high speed is critical. So that's probably my main focus.
Yeah. And are there any sort of misconceptions that people come to you with, like someone that is extremely muscular is going to be able to hit the ball further, or someone that isn't can't? Like, does that ever ring true? You see like a smaller guy belt it really far and like these big jack guys can't?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like long drive in that early mid 2000s had this really cool blend of strong, really big, strong guys, and you would almost argue like kind of these slingshots, like Jamie Solowski's a perfect example. And so you had this blend of guys that were in, 85 kilos and 115 kilos, and they're competing and they're producing the same speeds, the same club head. And it was this amazing time in the sport where everyone's like, this makes no sense.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's the cool thing about golf is there's not, and to be fair, every sport, there's not one answer. It's trying to find the best answer for the individual.
Mm.
And so for some people, having all this concentric muscle power and being really big and strong allows them to get it on the club.
Mm.
Where other players, being able to have that segmental understanding and how to coil their body and drive the segments in the right way is how they develop power. And that's why we have this spectrum, even on the, PGA Tour, where you see some of the big guys don't necessarily hit it as far as some of the little guys.
Yep.
And it's all about how we generate force, which is a really fun puzzle to try and work out for yourself and for others. Like, it's really cool.
Mm. That is interesting, because you see a guy like Rory, right? Not tall at all. He obviously works out quite a bit. He's got a great rig, but man, he can hit it. And it's technique, right?
Yeah.
Like it is, and technique and coaching.
And we saw Bryson go to that other end of the spectrum where he's like, I'm going to get bigger and stronger and faster. And he did, but he's kind of reverted back a little bit and still managed to maintain a lot of his speed. So it kind of showed like, yeah, you can develop all this muscle size and all this strength, but it's not everything. It does help, but it's not everything.
Yeah, I guess there's got to be a balance between the two, right? And then when you're in your capacity as a strength and conditioning coach at Golf New Zealand and you are coaching golfers, how do you sort of balance, like, where do you tweak your philosophy to they're not just trying to hit it as far as possible, but you need to be engineering their body in a certain way?
Yeah.
Like, how's the balancing act work, and what sort of things can you take from long drive into your other coaching?
So if we revert back a little bit, when I first got into long drive, all I did was I trained normally like I had always in the gym space, because I felt reasonably comfortable and confident with my routine. But the one thing I added, I was like, I just need to practice swinging the golf club faster. So the first week I hit 12 balls as hard as I could twice. And then the next week it was 14, and then 16, 18, 20. And then after 6 weeks, I went from swinging at 114 miles to 130 miles. So I was like, I gained 16 miles during that process. And for me, it was this realization of like, I've had this the whole time. I just hadn't learned how to express it. So in terms of the general golfer, it's going, the first thing I look at is how do they move? Because there's some guys that I train that are concentric based movers, where if they're stronger, that helps them jump better, which then helps them, potentially swing it better. And then there's other movers where it's just like the slingshots, they like to load segments and use that to produce force. And so getting big and stronger isn't necessarily the solution for them. It's more of like, how do we give them exercises and ways that they can continue expressing their movement and loading that coil of theirs, because that'll be a better transfer. So the movement of the person's the number one thing that I look at. And then from there, it's, if we're talking about a young tour player, is they have to be resilient. So we have to have some form of base strength that they can tolerate their job, because being on planes, playing in different places every week, sleeping in different beds, every week, it's really hard on your body. So you need to have some form of resilience that you can tolerate that. Then the next stepping stone is the performance piece, and it's going, what sort of gains do we see out of this exposure? And sometimes you can give guys a little bit and they get a lot, and sometimes you have to give guys quite a lot to get a little bit. So you're working out how they respond, what works well for them, and then from there that kind of dictates your plan, because if someone responds really well to things, you can give them lots of little micro doses, even when they're on the road playing tour events, and they can keep getting better and better and better. Where some other guys that require like a decent training block to improve, you go, well, while you're on the road, we're just trying to hold on to what you've got.
Okay.
Let's stay there, and then when you come home, we'll knuckle down and we'll make that next push.
Oh, that's so interesting, yeah, because I guess people's learning style has to come into play as well. If you've got someone who's like, okay, we can smash this out, we've got 2 hours right now, and then whatever we learn now, we box that off, we keep hold of that. Whereas some people, you can send them away with homework, essentially.
Correct.
Have them, man, that's something you don't think about as someone who requires coaching rather than does coaching.
Yeah, and it's the fun thing about it is that it's all about time with the person. Like if you spend time with someone and you start, working out how they adapt to things, that's when, the gold starts to really come out. And it's really hard. Like the online stuff is really good, but it also has its challenges because you don't have that face-to-face connection. You don't see how people move necessarily, and like finding workarounds for that is challenging. And when guys are on the road for, sometimes it could be 6, 7, 8 weeks in a row, like trying to check in to see that they're moving the way you want them to when they left has its challenges.
Yeah, I'll bet. Even with all the glorious technology.
Yeah.
And then your own training, you're off to the Worlds, I believe, at the end of the week.
Yes.
You have a regional event down in Otago.
In Canterbury.
Sorry. Before that, you're obviously getting quite close now to serious competition. Are you in a state where you're still tweaking things, working all the way up, or are you in that holding pattern?
No, I'm definitely still tweaking. There's Chris Charlton, a good friend of mine that we trained together. We had a bit of a sim replication of what Worlds would be of hitting 3 days in a row a couple of weeks ago. And the good thing about it was we both realized we had some flaws.
Okay.
And there was some technical stuff that we weren't executing well on day 2 because of pushing ourselves on day 1, etc. And so it's given us this little 2-week reset where we can invest in our bodies and invest in that technical work to ensure that when we turn up on the grid, we're not going to make that mistake. And so, yeah, definitely still tinkering away. I think for me personally, one of the gifts I have is range of motion, and I can get quite a lot of thoracic coil. So I noticed during that sim replication that I lost a bit of that, and it wasn't from physical elements. It was just technically I wasn't, making the most of my strength. So that's definitely a focus at the moment, and it probably will be all the way up until and into the event, I would say.
And I'm glad you brought up the fatigue element, because that's something I'm really interested in. You have 6 shots, 6 attempts per round across 3 days. How much are you thinking I need to keep a little bit in the tank here for what's coming, or is it just rip, and deal with it?
It's because you're hitting 30 competition balls, and then you've got all your warm-ups and everything else. Like it wouldn't be uncommon that you'd hit 80 drivers in the day. That would be probably pretty standard. And when I went the Worlds in 2023, I just presumed that I was going to be really amped up and that I was going to be super energetic, and I was determined to be like, I've just got to stay calm, be patient, execute my job. But what happened is I got halfway through my round and realized that I had suppressed myself too much. I wasn't swinging fast enough. I wasn't hitting it hard enough. And I was losing by, 5 yards here or 6 yards there. And it was like, I need to try and ramp this up. But I kind of left my run a little bit late.
Yeah.
So this time going over, it's if you don't get through day one, there is no day two. So you kind of have to put out a really strong product on day one, execute your job, get into day two, and then kind of repeat. And I think you're better to, you don't go 90% and then gamble. I think it's better to go over there and go, yeah, let's sit in that 95 to 100% rate. Ensure that you're through, and then if you accumulate enough points early in the day, you can kind of shut it down a little bit and work on some other elements, but don't risk it. Yes. And I think that's the learning I've got this time around.
Yeah, for sure. Because like you said it perfectly, if you don't get to day two, no need to worry about day two.
Yeah, and like with Liv and the development of golf, there's all this talk about, should players be paid, regardless of whether they make a cut or not, and all that. Yeah. With long drivers, you compete on the first day, half the field gets cut. The second day you compete in the morning, half the field gets cut. You compete in the afternoon, half the field gets cut, and then you compete on the third day. So it's just every round, half the field's getting cut. Wow. And so it's brutal, and that's why you just can't gamble. You just get through, and then if your body's a bit beaten up, you deal with those consequences because at least you're in the next day.
Yeah, far out. That is a brutal format, right? And then talking about long drive sort of more generally, where do you expect the competition to be coming from? Which countries are producing the most talent at the moment?
So long drive,
New Zealand,
apart from New Zealand, yeah. So long drive is traditionally really big in America, and that's where we've seen it televised quite a bit, growing up. But the cool thing is we see Europe is strengthening. There's 2 tours in Europe now, which is great. There's a lot of good players coming from there, and the cost from Europe to America probably prevents those guys competing a lot over there. But whenever they do, they are very competitive. I would say the third strongest nation, if we say North America's 1 and then Europe's 2, I would put Japan in 3.
Okay.
Japan is sensational. And it's not what you would expect, but Japan has up to 100 long drive events a year across their 2 tours. They have lots of people competing in lots of different divisions. And it's that same blend where you see some of the big muscular guys and some of the small slingshot guys, and it's this really cool competition in Japan where there's this premium on accuracy. And so like those guys will be competitive at Worlds for sure.
Yeah, far out. Japan, that is surprising. But I think it goes back to what you've just been explaining about how it's not just being big, it's not just being strong, like the technique can get you there. Like you see these amazing shot shapes and all that sort of stuff that people can produce. So that's going to be really interesting. I'll be checking for Japan on the leaderboard now. Just one last one before we go outside and hit some balls and we start putting some of the stuff into practice. Just a really quick one. What would it mean to you to come back having won at the World Long Drive Champs?
Oh, honestly, it would be pretty surreal. Yeah. Like it's a dream you have where it's being a world champion in anything is sensational and something to be proud of. But I think the cool thing is the journey I've been on has been so enlightening for my own practice and trying to be a better coach. And I've learned a lot about myself and athletic development. And that's been super enlightening. I guess if I was to win, then it changes a few routes on what you potentially do going forward and what you might look into with your own athletic development and your coaching pathway and stuff. But yeah, honestly, that would be a really nice afterthought. It would be one of those surreal things where you're like, what do I do now? Yeah. And that would be a great place to be in. But right now, I'm just excited to get over there and try and get in the mix.
Yeah. Well, it'd be amazing for you to be able to go and say, hey, I'm a golf coach and I'm also a world champion. I'm sure it'd be great for you. Yeah. Thanks so much for joining me, George. It's been amazing.
Awesome.
Thanks for all the insight. Best of luck at Worlds, and we'll go hit some balls now and we'll see what we can do.
Let's go.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome.